The fluorescent lights of Hartsfield-Jackson Airport hummed faintly, casting a sterile glow over the endless stream of travelers moving through the terminal. Alicia Carter tightened her grip on the handle of her suitcase, exhaustion settling into her bones after the long flight from Los Angeles. All she wanted was to get home, take a hot shower, and fall into the comfort of her bed next to Michael. She had barely taken a few steps toward the exit when she noticed them. Two uniformed police officers, their expressions unreadable, moved through the crowd with unsettling purpose. They weren't scanning the area or casually observing. They were coming straight for her. "Ma'am," the taller one said, stepping directly into her path. "We need to ask you a few questions." Alicia blinked. "Excuse me." The second officer, a stocky man with a southern drawl, gave her a slow once-over. "You just arrived from Los Angeles?" Alicia hesitated. Something about the way he asked made her skin crawl. "Yes." "Is there a problem?" "We just need to verify some information," the taller officer said. "May we see your ID and travel documents?" Passengers flowed around them, some glancing curiously, others quickly averting their eyes. Alicia felt the familiar weight of unwanted attention pressing down on her. She forced a polite smile. "I don't understand. Why am I being stopped?" "It's just routine, ma'am." Routine. She had heard that word before. Alicia inhaled deeply and reached into her purse, pulling out her passport, driver's license, and even her work ID. The officer took them, barely glancing at the details before exchanging a look with his partner. "What was the purpose of your trip to Los Angeles?" "Business." "What kind of business?" Alicia's patience thinned. "I'm an attorney. I was attending a legal conference." "Who paid for your ticket?" She narrowed her eyes. "I did." The officers remained stone-faced. The taller one gestured to her suitcase. "We're going to need to take a look inside." A sharp pulse of anger shot through her veins. "On what grounds?" The stocky officer's lips curled slightly, as if he had been waiting for her to resist. "Ma'am, if you refuse to comply, we can take this to a more private area." Alicia clenched her jaw. She knew how this game worked. If she protested, she would be labeled uncooperative. If she demanded a reason, they would suddenly fear for their safety. If she refused, she could be detained for suspicious behavior. She wasn't naive. She had defended too many clients who had been in this exact situation, except they didn't have a law degree or a federal agent for a husband. Still, the humiliation of it burned. She slowly unzipped her suitcase, her fingers trembling with rage. One of the officers rifled through her neatly packed clothes, pulling out garments with complete disregard, shoving them aside as if expecting to find something hidden beneath. A silk blouse tumbled to the ground, landing in a crumpled heap. "Seriously?" Alicia snapped, bending to pick it up. "Stand back, ma'am," the taller officer warned. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Around her, people were watching. Some stared openly, others pretended they weren't interested, but no one said a word. A white woman nearby shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Alicia before quickly looking away. A businessman in a suit frowned but kept walking. A young couple whispered to each other, shaking their heads. Alicia felt stripped bare. They weren't just searching her suitcase. They were searching her, picking apart her presence, her legitimacy, her very right to exist in this space without suspicion. Her breath shuddered in her chest. She forced herself to focus. "Stay calm. Don't give them an excuse." The stocky officer held up a book from her bag. The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness. His mouth twitched. Interesting read. Alicia didn't answer. After what felt like an eternity, the officers finally stepped back. "All right," the taller one said, handing her documents back. "You're free to go." Alicia's fingers curled around the passport, her nails pressing into the leather cover. Free to go. As if they had ever had the right to hold her in the first place. Her throat tightened. She wanted to say something. She wanted to call them out, demand accountability, make a scene. But she knew better. And then, "Is there a problem here?" The voice was deep, commanding, laced with an authority that made both officers freeze. "Michael." He moved through the crowd, his sharp, dark suit immaculate despite the long day. His eyes locked onto the officers with an intensity that sent a visible ripple of discomfort through them. The stocky officer cleared his throat. "No problem at all, sir. Just a routine check." Michael's gaze flickered to Alicia, scanning her face, the tension in her body, the mess of her suitcase. His jaw tightened. He reached into his pocket and produced his badge. FBI Special Agent Michael Carter. "Funny," he said smoothly, "because I can't think of a single federal directive that would justify stopping a U.S. citizen without cause." The officers stiffened. The color drained slightly from their faces. The taller one attempted to recover. "It was just—" "I'm going to need your names and badge numbers," Michael interrupted, his voice quiet but firm. The stocky officer hesitated. "Sir, we were just—" "Now." Alicia watched, almost detached, as the two men scrambled to comply. They rattled off their information, voices suddenly hesitant, all the confidence they had wielded over her moments ago now gone. Michael didn't move until they had finished. Then, with a final lingering stare, he stepped closer to Alicia and reached for her suitcase. "Let's go." She followed, her limbs stiff, her breath still uneven. The weight of the incident clung to her, pressing against her ribs like a vice. As they walked through the terminal, silence stretched between them. Only when they reached the parking garage did Alicia finally speak. Her voice was quiet, yet razor-sharp with emotion. "If you hadn't been here—" Michael exhaled slowly. "I know." Her fingers curled into fists. "And what about everyone else? The people who don't have an FBI agent for a husband? The ones who can't flash a badge to make it stop?" Michael stopped walking. He turned to face her, his eyes heavy with something deeper than anger, something darker. "Then we do something about it," he said. Alicia swallowed. She wanted to believe it was that simple. But deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. The hum of the city buzzed outside the Carter household, the distant wail of a siren blending with the rhythmic thump of a neighbor's car stereo. Inside, Alicia sat at the kitchen table, her untouched cup of tea growing cold in her hands. She had changed into comfortable clothes, but the unease from the airport incident clung to her like a second skin. Michael moved around the kitchen, his movements precise and methodical. He placed his phone face down on the counter before turning to her. "You okay?" Alicia hesitated. Was she? Her mind replayed the scene at the airport, her belongings scattered, strangers staring, the officer's smug expressions before Michael stepped in. What if he hadn't been there? The thought made her sick. "I'm fine," she finally muttered. Michael studied her, his sharp eyes flickering with something unreadable. "You don't have to act tough with me." Alicia sighed, pushing her tea aside. "I know. She shook her head. "I don't want to let this go. Not this time." Michael's jaw tightened. "Alicia." "No, Michael," she snapped, her exhaustion giving way to frustration. "This keeps happening. People like those officers abuse their power every day, and nothing ever happens to them. And I'm sick of it." His silence stretched between them. Then, finally, "So what are you going to do?" She scoffed. "What I always do. Fight back." Michael exhaled through his nose, his expression unreadable. "Meaning?" "I want their badge numbers. Their full names. I want to file a formal complaint. Hell, maybe I'll go further than that." Michael rubbed the back of his neck. "Alicia, listen." "No." "You saw what happened. If you hadn't been there, they would have dragged me into some back room like I was a damn criminal." Michael pressed his lips into a thin line. "I just don't want you putting yourself in the crosshairs." Alicia frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" He hesitated, but before he could answer, his phone buzzed on the counter. Alicia's eyes flickered to the screen. No caller ID. Michael immediately grabbed it, turning away from her as he answered. "Yeah." His voice was clipped, lower than usual. He listened for a moment before stepping out of the kitchen, muttering, "I'll take care of it." Alicia's stomach twisted. Michael had always been private about his work, but something about his reaction felt off. When he returned, his face was composed, but Alicia had spent years studying people in courtrooms. She knew when someone was hiding something. "Everything okay?" she asked carefully. "Yeah. Just work." She didn't believe him. Alicia starts digging. The next day, Alicia sat in her office, staring at the blank legal pad in front of her. She had intended to prepare notes for an upcoming case, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Michael. I just don't want you putting yourself in the crosshairs. Why had he said that? And why did he react so strangely to that phone call? Alicia had spent years trusting the system, believing that laws could bring justice. But last night, as she lay awake in bed, she realized something unsettling. She trusted the law more than she trusted her own husband. She needed to know what was going on. Her fingers hovered over her phone before she finally dialed a number. After 2 rings, a familiar voice answered. Alicia Carter. Been a while. Hey, Valerie. Valerie Green had been one of the best investigative journalists in New York before moving to Atlanta. They had worked together on a wrongful conviction case years ago, and if there was anyone who could find information, it was her. What do you need? Valerie asked, always straight to the point. Alicia hesitated before saying, I need you to look into someone for me. A beat of silence. Then, who? Alicia exhaled. Michael Carter. Another pause, longer this time. Your husband? Yes. Valerie didn't laugh. She didn't call Alicia paranoid. Instead, she simply said, Tell me everything. Alicia hesitated, then recounted everything. Michael's strange reaction to the airport incident, the suspicious phone call, his increasing secrecy. When she finished, Valerie let out a slow breath. You're sure about this? No, Alicia admitted. But something doesn't feel right. There was a rustling sound, like Valerie was grabbing a notepad. All right. I'll dig around. See what I can find. Alicia's grip tightened around the phone. If there's nothing, tell me. If there's something, you'll be the first to know. As Alicia hung up, a deep sense of unease settled in her chest. For the first time since she had met Michael, she realized she might not know who he really was. An ominous warning. That night, as Alicia left her office building, she noticed something strange. A black SUV was parked across the street. Its engine was off, but someone was inside, watching. Alicia's pulse quickened. She forced herself to act normal, walking to her car with steady steps. But when she got in, she subtly glanced in the rearview mirror. The SUV didn't move. Alicia gripped the steering wheel. Paranoia? Or was this real? When she got home, Michael was already there, sitting in the dimly lit living room. His laptop was open, his face illuminated by the glow of the screen. Alicia hesitated in the doorway. Long day. Michael glanced up, closing his laptop too quickly. Yeah. Alicia bit her lip. Michael, is there something you're not telling me? His expression didn't change. Why would you ask that? She crossed her arms. Because you've been acting strange since the airport. You took a phone call last night and wouldn't tell me who it was. And now, I feel like I'm being watched. Michael's eyes darkened. What do you mean, watched? There was a car outside my office tonight. Michael stood immediately. What kind of car? Black SUV. Tinted windows. Michael's jaw tightened. That reaction. It was so instant. Too familiar. Alicia took a step closer. Michael. What the hell is going on? For the first time since she had met him, Michael didn't have an answer. And that scared her more than anything. The morning air was thick with humidity as Alicia sat in her parked car, fingers drumming restlessly on the steering wheel. She hadn't slept. Not really. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Michael's reaction from the night before. His tense jaw, the way his body had gone rigid when she mentioned the SUV. He was hiding something. And she was done waiting for him to tell her. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Valerie. Alicia grabbed it immediately. Tell me you have something. A pause. Then, Valerie spoke, her voice lower than usual. We need to meet. In person. Alicia's stomach dropped. That bad? You have no idea. The truth comes out. They met at a quiet diner on the outskirts of the city, far from prying eyes. Valerie was already there, her laptop open, a black coffee untouched in front of her. She looked up as Alicia slid into the booth. Without preamble, she turned the screen toward Alicia. Your husband is being investigated by the FBI. Alicia's breath caught. What? Valerie nodded toward the screen. I pulled records from some of my sources. Michael's name has been flagged in an internal investigation. They suspect him of being involved in something serious: corruption, misconduct, maybe even obstruction of justice. Alicia stared at the words flashing across the screen. Suspicious activity. Internal review. Pending disciplinary action. Her head spun. This doesn't make sense. Doesn't it? Valerie's voice was gentle but firm. Think about it, Alicia. His long hours. The secrecy. The way he reacted when you brought up the SUV. You said he told you not to put yourself in the crosshairs. Maybe because he's already in them. Alicia's heart pounded. Why wouldn't he tell me? Valerie gave her a long look. Because whatever he's caught up in, he knows it could destroy him. Alicia swallowed hard. Or worse, it could destroy them both. The FBI comes knocking. That night, Alicia sat on the couch, her mind a whirlwind. She needed to confront Michael. She needed answers. But before she could do anything, there was a knock at the door. She frowned. It was nearly midnight. Michael was in the kitchen. He turned toward her, his expression instantly alert. Alicia hesitated before opening the door. Two men in dark suits stood on the porch. They weren't police. They weren't neighborhood watch. They were federal agents. Mrs. Carter, the taller one, asked. Alicia's throat went dry. Yes. He pulled out a badge. FBI. We need to speak with your husband. Alicia didn't move. This wasn't happening. Michael appeared behind her, his face unreadable. What's this about? The shorter agent didn't flinch. Michael Carter, you're under investigation for misconduct related to a federal case. Alicia's pulse roared in her ears. Misconduct? What? Michael held up a hand, stopping her. I want my lawyer. The taller agent gave him a thin smile. Good. You're married to one. Confrontation. An hour later, after the agents left, Alicia turned to Michael, furious. How long? Her voice trembled with rage. How long have you been hiding this from me? Michael ran a hand down his face. Alicia. No, she snapped. You don't get to smooth this over. You're being investigated by your own agency, and I had to find out from Valerie. Michael's gaze darkened. You went to Valerie? Of course I did. Because my own husband wouldn't tell me the truth. Michael exhaled sharply, pacing. I didn't want to pull you into this. Alicia's laughter was bitter. Oh well, too late for that. The FBI was just in our house, Michael. So tell me, what the hell is going on? He hesitated. That 1 second of silence shattered something inside her. My God, she whispered. You still don't trust me. Michael's jaw clenched. It's not about trust. It's about keeping you safe. Alicia shook her head. Michael, whatever this is, it's already in our lives. You don't get to pretend it's not. For the first time, he looked scared. And that terrified her more than anything else. Alicia had spent her entire career unraveling lies. She could spot inconsistencies in witness statements, dismantle shaky alibis, and expose hidden truths in a courtroom filled with deception. But she had never expected to be on the other side of it. Sitting in her home office, she stared at the documents Valerie had sent her, emails, case files, sealed reports that no civilian should have access to. At the center of it all, Michael Carter. Her husband. Her fingers trembled as she clicked through the records. The allegations against him weren't just serious, they were career-ending. Agent Carter has been identified as a potential leak in an ongoing federal investigation. Internal Affairs has flagged multiple discrepancies in his case reports, suggesting obstruction or misconduct. Alicia's stomach twisted. Michael was under suspicion for leaking classified information. She leaned back in her chair, exhaling sharply. No. This didn't make sense. Michael was the most by-the-book person she had ever met. He believed in law, in justice, in the system. And yet, she thought about his recent behavior. The late nights. The guarded conversations. The fear in his eyes when she confronted him. She wanted to believe him. But belief wasn't enough. She needed proof. A dangerous encounter. Alicia was so lost in thought that she almost didn't hear the car pull up outside. Her heart skipped. She knew that sound. The slow roll of an engine idling. Her breath caught as she moved to the window. The black SUV. It was back. Her pulse pounded as she reached for her phone. She hesitated before dialing. Michael. No. He wouldn't tell her the truth. Instead, she dialed Valerie. Yeah. Valerie answered quickly. There's a car outside my house. Alicia's voice was tight. Silence. Then, SUV. Tinted windows. Alicia swallowed. Yes. Valerie cursed under her breath. Okay, listen to me carefully. Stay inside. Lock your doors. Don't engage. Alicia's hands shook as she lowered the blinds. Who are they? I don't know yet. Could be feds keeping tabs on Michael. Could be someone else. A cold dread settled in Alicia's chest. What do you mean, someone else? Alicia, Valerie hesitated. I think Michael might have been framed. The confrontation. Michael came home late, his shoulders heavy with tension. Alicia was waiting for him. She didn't say anything at first. Just held up the files Valerie had sent her. His expression didn't change. But his eyes did. I need the truth, she said quietly. Right now. Michael exhaled slowly. Then, finally, they're trying to set me up. Alicia's breath hitched. Who? Michael ran a hand over his face. Some people in the bureau. I was investigating corruption in an internal task force. A case involving illegal surveillance, fabricated evidence, and racial profiling. His jaw clenched. The same kind of profiling they pulled on you at the airport. Alicia's stomach twisted. They stopped me on purpose? Michael nodded. They wanted to see how you'd react. To see if you'd fight back. She stared at him, horror creeping in. And if I had resisted? Michael's face darkened. They were waiting for an excuse. Alicia felt sick. He continued, his voice tight. I got too close to the truth. Now, they're making it look like I'm the dirty one. She gripped the files tighter. Why didn't you tell me? Michael met her gaze. Because I knew the second you found out, you'd try to fight back. Alicia blinked. And his next words sent a chill down her spine. And they don't just go after the person under investigation, Alicia. His voice was dead serious. They go after their families, too. The breaking point. Alicia's entire world shifted. She had spent years fighting for justice, believing in the law. But now, the very system she had trusted was being weaponized against her husband. And if Michael was right, she wasn't just a bystander in this. She was a target. Alicia set her jaw. We're not running from this. Michael searched her face. Alicia, you have to be careful. She stepped closer, voice firm. I'm a lawyer. You're an agent. We know how to fight back. Michael hesitated, then nodded. Alicia took his hand. We expose them, she whispered. Before they destroy us first. Alicia Carter had spent years learning how to dismantle a case, finding the weak spots, exposing the lies, and forcing the truth into the light. Now, she wasn't just fighting in a courtroom. She was fighting for her life. The plan. Michael paced their living room, his face tight with exhaustion. We have to move fast. Alicia's hands trembled as she sorted through the evidence. Documents, emails, encrypted messages Valerie had uncovered. It was all here. The illegal wiretaps. The fabricated reports. The FBI agents manipulating cases to target black communities. And Michael, he had been on their trail for months. That's why they had turned against him. Alicia swallowed. How do we get this out? Michael exhaled. Valerie can help. But once this goes public, there's no going back. Alicia met his gaze. Then let's make sure we hit them hard. The trap. They knew the FBI wouldn't let them just walk away. So they set a trap. Michael arranged a meeting with his handler, Agent William Cross, the man leading the investigation against him. Alicia, armed with a hidden recorder, would listen from a safe distance. If Cross incriminated himself, they'd have what they needed. The meeting took place in a quiet parking garage, neutral ground. Dark. Isolated. Michael stood alone, hands in his pockets, as Cross approached. The man was calm, confident. Too confident. You're making this harder than it needs to be, Cross said smoothly. Michael didn't blink. You're framing me. Cross sighed. No, Carter. We're protecting something bigger than you. The Bureau has a way of keeping people in line. He took a step closer. You, of all people, should know that. Alicia's heart pounded as she listened through her earpiece. This was it. This was the proof. Michael held his ground. So the false reports, the illegal surveillance, that's just business as usual? Cross smirked. You were asking too many questions. The moment you started looking into our work, you became a liability. He pulled something from his pocket. A flash drive. Alicia's blood ran cold. What the hell is that? Cross tossed it to Michael. That's what we have on you. It's enough to ruin you. Enough to put Alicia in jeopardy, too. His smile was razor-sharp. Walk away, Carter, or we burn you both. Alicia gritted her teeth. Not this time. She pressed a button on her phone and sent the live recording straight to Valerie. The fallout. An hour later, the story was everywhere. FBI agent exposes internal corruption, illegal surveillance, racial profiling at the highest levels. The leaks spread like wildfire. Valerie had sent the recording to multiple news outlets, ensuring no one could bury it. The Bureau was in chaos. Michael and Alicia sat together in their home, watching the headlines explode across the screen. Michael exhaled. It's done. Alicia, still tense, shook her head. Not yet. Cross and his people won't go down quietly. Michael reached for her hand. But we hit them first. For the first time in days, Alicia let herself breathe. They had won. The aftermath. The FBI launched an internal investigation. Several agents, including Cross, were placed on leave, facing possible criminal charges. Michael's suspension was lifted, but the damage was done. He turned in his badge. I can't work for a system like this anymore, he told Alicia. I'd rather burn it down and rebuild it the right way. Alicia, now a public figure in the fight against corruption, knew their battle wasn't over. One night, as they sat on their balcony, Alicia looked at Michael and murmured, "We exposed them. But what about the next ones?" Michael squeezed her hand. "Then we keep fighting. And they would. Together."